Hello, hello. Oh my goodness. Why am I still in my scheduler? That's very weird. Hi everybody. Oh wait, now I can see myself again. Hi. I'm still trying to figure this out. I'll get there someday. I appreciate all you folks who have been watching these videos and have not totally come at me about the fact that I really don't know how to run any of this stuff, but I'm learning. So it gives me something to do. So hi, I'm Stacy, and I'm hoping I am able to help you with the end of the frog today. I see somebody's posting about learning to crochet cute stuff. Okay, so this is like the fourth video that I've done. So check out the pattern. It's in a link in the description down below, and it's a free pattern, so you can go ahead and check it out. And I have various tips over the different videos on how to do certain things. So I am almost done with my frogs here, as you can see. I'll show this guy here. He's got like all of his limbs. Oh, hi, Colleen. I didn't know that was you. Thank you. So here's my guy. He's got all of his limbs. He has no eyes right now, but I do have eyes to sew on him. I've got this, what my friend Amalia deemed a unit. She saw him yesterday. He's missing a leg. So we're going to work on how I attach my legs. As you can see, it's sort of different than some other amigurumi. So he doesn't have legs that move, but I am in the process of redesigning parts of the pattern, which might end up being like a pay portion. I don't know. I got to figure out how that works. But what I'm going to do is I'm hopefully going to figure out how to make these legs a joint so you could sit him down. But as for right now, his legs are just supposed to look like when he's in the show, he's usually hanging. Like Greg carries him and his little feet are hanging down and stuff. So I'm going to show you how I attach the leg. So I have this old drumstick here, and I worked the bottom of the foot. So in the pattern, you make the 2 feet and you crochet it like a tube, but you just flatten it out. So there's no stuffing or anything in here. It's just the part of the yarn where I started, the amigurumi ring, is living inside this piece. And this is where I bound off. So when I'm working on this part, some people say this is not the right thing to do. I'm not here to be your judge or jury. If you want to do it this way, more power to you. I do it this way. Haven't had a problem with anything falling apart, and actually it helps me to avoid having little bits everywhere, because I know once you start trimming off, you're going to end up with all kinds of yarn, if you're careful like I am, long tails and things like that. I use my tails to sew. So what I do is I have the end of this foot right here, and I just take it, the tail, and run it through like the next 2 stitches just to kind of close this up. The cool thing about this particular piece is that there's no stuffing in it. I don't have to worry about anything falling out of it. It's not a super big deal if like I were able to stick something down in this hole right here, right? So with that being said, and pass through that next stitch, I am literally, let's see how I'm going to do this, going to take my needle and I'm going to shove it all the way through to right there. So now when you're making the feet, the part where you start off with the amigurumi ring is going to be the back of the foot. the part where you end is going to be the toes. And when you have the part where you finish your last stitch, it's going to kind of give you a little bit of an angle there. So you'll have a foot shape. So if I lay this down like this, you can see it has like a little bit of an angle here. So what I do when I'm attaching the legs is I make sure that my feet are oriented the same way. Like this guy, he's a little bit different. I kind of pulled him a little tight there on the end, but just to make it look like these feet maybe should be oriented a particular way. And then once I sew them on to the leg, I'll like double check to make sure that the feet look like they're on the right side of the body. I know I'm probably making it sound a little bit more hard than it is. It's not really that hard. Just take a look at your stuff when you sew it on and make sure it looks like your feet are on the right legs. Okay, so here's my big old drumstick. For these legs, you start with your amigurumi ring down at the bottom, and then you crochet up to about here. This is where the pattern will call for you to stuff the bottom of the leg. So he's got these juicy calves. And then you're going to go back down to 6 stitches for the knee joint. This will make it so it's easy to bend. And then you start increasing up here for these juicy drumsticks. Okay. So here's the leg. And usually what I'll do is I'll orient it with it facing away. It has a lot of dog hair on it. I'm sorry. And then I'll just take a look to see where I want to place it, right? And what I do is for these, here's my finished guy, my little dude right here. I make sure he's got like a heel in the back. Now, if you don't like that particular thing, you could go ahead and just sew it straight on to the back of the foot so he doesn't have that little heel bit. But personally, I liked that, and this was based more on the character design for the frog for the cartoon, based on the turns that the artist did. And when they did his feet, he had little heels there. So what I'll do is I'll make sure, okay, this wants to bend this way, and this foot should be oriented on this particular leg. I have my yarn there. And because I went ahead and crocheted into the back loop, I do have these loops here so I can attach them. And I literally just sew it on. And the thing is, I mean, not that you want to be messy, but you probably could be pretty messy and it'll still be pretty forgiving. Everything's one color. It's not like you're trying to attach too many different colors to one thing. So I'll do a couple stitches here on the side, and then what I'll do is I'll go to the back, and I've got a few stitches here, but you can see on this foot, like there's a couple rows. What I'll do is I'll start going through these ridges here to sew it together. So here I went through that ridge. I'm just going to find a good stitch to attach it to and go through this ridge, cinch it up tight. Here's another stitch. Maybe it's not even going the same way. You know, feel your way through it and see if it looks good to you. If it doesn't look good to you, just pull it out and find a different stitch. Usually I kind of just plop these guys together. Okay. So there we are on the second side. And you'll notice I'm using both of my tails, since this particular guy he's the big one that I went ahead and crocheted double with the yarn. So I'm using both the tails to sew through. So I'll pull that through there. And I'll just keep finding the little ridges to sew it together with. And then see here are my ridges here. Let me bring it up here. Here are my ridges here. Here's my ridges here. I'll just go through those ridges and yoink them together. Now to fasten off. Yesterday when I did the other leg, what I had done was find a place where you might have like a divot. So as you can see right here, I've got a few holes in here. Now, if you were doing this with the single yarn, you could split your yarn and do this. You could just tie a knot and find a place to shove it. Like, the cool thing about amigurumi is it's not like wearing a garment, right? If you're knitting a garment or you're crocheting a garment, you have to be really aware of where you're, adding new yarns and where, not that I would advocate for knots, you should always be weaving in your ends, but you have to be aware of where certain things happen so that they're not visible to people when you're wearing your garment. With amigurumi, it's so easy to hide knots. Like, sometimes you can just find them all over the place and you're good. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop one of the yarns through here like this. Okay? So I have two ends. I know one is secured and I'm literally going to tie them together in, I think maybe this is a surgeon's knot. I just do the crisscross and do this for one. And then I crisscross it again, but for this one, I wrap it around twice. I think that's called a surgeon's knot. I have to say that my Girl Scout knot knowledge from when I was a kid is not the greatest. So it's basically a double knot. Anywho, so then I take this, and what I'll do is I'll pop it back into that, and then I will push the needle up the leg. So now my knot's in here. Nobody's really going to see it when this doll is attached, the leg's attached. And then I've pulled my ends through, and you can, stick them up as far as you want. It's your life and you can do what you like. And then all you got to do is just pull it snug, snip it, make sure you're not cutting your fabric. I haven't done it yet, but I'm paranoid that it's going to happen at some point. And that's it. It's gone. You can't see it. And the ends are up in the leg. And there's our beautiful foot. The toes on this one are actually really good. I'm pretty pleased with this. Now, for the top of this leg, I am going to do something a little bit different than how I did the other one. But hopefully everybody knows how to do a little sewing. And like I said, it's super forgiving. So let's talk about oopsies, right? Okay. So when you have an oops, like, oh my gosh, I just finished this leg. I was, so when I had finished some of these body parts at my friend's house yesterday. And on a couple of the body parts that I was working on, what I had done was instead of taking the massive 1 pound of like Karen yarn or whatever, I rolled off small balls of yarn because I knew I was only going to be making like a foot or what have you. So I had these tiny balls of yarn in my kit. You can see roughly about this size. And sometimes when you're working like that, you may find that you have just enough yarn to complete the piece, but maybe the tail is not as long as you would like it to be. Okay. If that's the case, and let's say your tail's real short, just go ahead and get more yarn. It's not going to kill you. Like, We're not about being like super crazy about weaving in with your tails. But if you do want to weave in with your tail, make sure you have enough yarn to do it. If you don't have enough yarn to do it, use a separate string. For this particular one, since my yarn's doubled, I'm going to use both ends, but I'm not going to use them together like I just did for the foot, because I made an oopsie and I cut too short. So I just closed this loop at the top. There are 6 stitches here, so I just pulled it through one of the next stitches, and just find a good place. I like to pull in between the V's just to cinch it closed. Okay, so here's our leg and here's our body. Now this is a big chunky guy, so we're gonna see how this works. But as you can see from him right here, sometimes what I do is I might not secure him all the way up to the top for these. So I don't know, all these look like they're pretty much up to the top, but when I am securing these, what I do is I sew them in sideways. So you'll find that there are a number of rows here that are actually attached to the body. In general, I'll use the top ridge of the first row that I've done here, this amigurumi. Well, I guess it's not really the amigurumi ring. It's the end of the leg where I cinch it closed. There's 6 stitches here. When you see these ridges right here, from the previous row of 12, I think it was 12 or maybe it was 8. But when you see the ridges here from the previous row, that's the row that I'm going to stitch into these ridges here. So it makes life kind of easy because you have something visually that you're looking at. Also too, then when you're attaching these to the body, always take a look and make sure that you're attaching the same amount of rows to the body, because we do have this piece right here, his little booty, that will stick down. So when you're attaching these, just make sure they look even. You can do as many rows as you want to attach them to the body for as much as you want. Like, how sturdy do you want this little turkey, right? Because if you think about it, it does kind of look like a, would that be like a little turkey? Like this, right? You can use your best judgment on that. No one is here to be yarn police or project police. Okay, so for these guys right here, I'm going to go ahead and slide this through. I'm going to make sure, I'm going to turn him upside down. So maybe that might be a little bit easier here. I'm going to do a visual check to make sure that where it's attached, also this is another reason why having these and doing them through the back loop makes it so easy for measurements. Like I said, some people don't really like this type of fabric, and that's fine. If you want to go through both of the legs of the crochet stitch, you can. But for me personally, when I'm lining up arms or eyes, it makes it so much easier for me to say, oh, look, okay, this is the row that it's attached to right there. And I can just go across and see that I'm now in the same row. Hey, everybody, say hi to my mom. She's here. Hi, Mom. So here we go right here. I'm only going to take the one yarn for now. And I'm going to go through one of these top stitches and, oh gosh, where do I want to put him? I think I'm going to go through this one right here. Now, when sewing this guy together, it can be a bit of a pain because you do have to hold him close, because the surface area that's going to be attached is going to be an oval like this. So it's not as easy as just attaching something on at the top and then just leaving it. He just would flop, his leg would flop around. So you're going to be doing like a sideways oval on these. And I like to hold him steady while I'm doing it and then just eyeball it. So like here is, I'm gonna make sure I'm on camera here. Here's the next stitch. And then I'm gonna pop it through this one right here. I'll move this guy out of the way. Here's another stitch, and I'll pop it through this one right here. And you keep doing this all the way down. Oopsies, I lost my thing. You keep doing that all the way down the leg until you decide that, oh, okay, I've now stopped at the place where I need to stop for him to be attached. Don't mind my dogs. Okay, so like this. Bless you. And then like this. Let's see how much of my head I can get into my my camera. You guys, I have really bad eyesight. I have to be like right on top of my stuff. So this is like really interesting for me. Is last night I was crocheting and I'm like right up in my face. Which is, I admit, is kind of funny, especially if you're working on the butt of an animal. Like, hey, look at, I just have a big butt in my face. Okay, so let's see. Now, here's another thing to consider. When you're working in the round like this, you're working in a spiral. So there are chances are that things will shift downward as you go around in the circle. I can show you an example at the end of a project that I just made for myself for my birthday. That was this past week. So, and it's a perfect example of how crochet shifts. So a lot of times when you crochet, it's not like knitting where you can have a really good up-down movement when you're working in a spiral. Okay, so everything's going to kind of shift in a direction. So let's say this leg right here is attached on this particular ridge right here. But maybe I feel like maybe that's, if I feel it's too low on this side, or I don't like where it is visually, just stop at the stitch before it. I mean, this one doesn't look too bad. So I'm just going to go with it and hope for the best. And we'll see how it turns out. And honestly, like I said, this kind of stuff is so forgiving that really nobody's going to be like, oh my gosh, you screwed up because the legs aren't even. If anybody comes to you and says that, please, by all means, tell them you don't need to be friends anymore, because that is not very nice. And I don't know a single person on this planet or animal on this planet that is perfectly symmetrical, because that would not be interesting. So let's keep it interesting. And if somebody tells you that your legs are not good, then you tell them to take a walk away. Okay, so I did the front part of this stitch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip him over. Since I had the short ends here, I'm going to flip him over and I'm going to use the other yarn to do the back. Okay, so let's see if I can get him lined up here. Alrighty. So I'm going to go through, sorry about my dogs. I'm going to go through this stitch right here. And that's just basically like, you want to have a good maybe 3 stitches at the top of the leg attached to the body. It'll make it nice and sturdy. And with these guys, I find that sturdy is good. It might be a different story, and leg placement might be different once I can figure out how to do, I'm brainstorming different ways to do like a jointed leg. I'd like to do something that is easy for everybody who maybe doesn't have experience in putting joints in a doll, but I'll be honest, I'm learning myself. So I figure whatever feels like it's going to be the easiest for me, I'll probably include. So, because that's how I roll. Okay, so it looks like for this guy right here, I sewed him down to about here. Okay. So just keep picking up and moving further down the leg. Hopefully I'm doing this okay in camera. It's kind of like feels a little like juggling. Okay. So we're going to do to there. All right. So now we're at the bottom. His crotch, if you will. There we go. And let me see if I can show you in here. Might be a little bit hard to do because I'd have to sit him up. But if you look inside his crotch area, I have 2 stitches next to each other, and that's where both of these strings have gone through. So I think how I want to do this is, I think I'm going to pop these through to the leg side. So there's one, and you can see where, like if I pull him, that yarn's coming out. So we'll cinch that up in just a sec. And because it's in his crotch, really, is anybody going to look at his crotch? Like, oh my gosh, you made a messy crotch. He's got a knot. No, nobody cares. And he's your frog, and you can do whatever you want. Okay. Also, the cool thing about these legs, I mean, obviously you want to make sure they're oriented the correct way. Stitch that, and then bloop, and bloop. And then there's the knot. And now I can put those 2 together, and then I can pop the ends back into the frog, and that should hopefully hide the knot. And the cool thing about this is when, I'm gonna pull them off camera for a sec so I can go deep dive here. All right, so the cool thing about this is when you put his legs on, there are certain things you can do to give him more personality, if you will. And one of my favorite things to do with my dolls, because I happen to be someone who is afflicted by this particular thing, and I don't know how many people have ever noticed this, so it'll be fun to just divulge my private life on the internets, but I am pigeon-toed, and a lot of times if I get nervous or I'm stressed out, the more I'm stressed out, the more my feet turn inward. So if you look at many of my dolls, if I am able to pose them, I will pose them with their feet turned in. So if that is something that you are interested in doing to give some personality to your amigurumi, then rotate the legs in. You can make them knock-kneed, you know. But this is something I like to do where I always have the toes turned in. And honestly, like I could turn these, like for this particular doll, because of the way it's attached and the way these are put in, and there's no armature or anything within this doll. So it's not like it's super posable, but if you wanted to, all you have to do is rotate and you've got pigeon-toed baby right here. Okay. And that's just like a little detail that kind of gives it a little bit more personality when you're making these guys. Because I mean, if you think about it, he's really all face and body, and sometimes it's the small things that you do when you're putting together a doll that give it that personality. Like he's the big frowner and he's got big bulgy eyes. I find that a lot of the dolls that I really like, aside from this one, have eyelids. And I find a lot of people don't put eyelids on their amigurumi, but I think it gives a lot of personality. I can also show you eyelids later. Okay. So he's pigeon-toed now, but now he's got 2 legs, so check him out. Here he is. Okay. So, next up. I don't know whether this is something that people find difficult or not, so we are going to go over it. If I can find where the rest of my yarn went. Oh my goodness. So crazy. It's like there's so much yarn in this house. You would think that I would know where everything is, but that is not the case. So, I would say if you're making dolls, please think about giving them any kind of personality. If you want to give them eyebrows, eyebrows are fantastic for personality. Or if there are certain things you want to do to their nose. I know that you can't really tell in this, but he also has nostrils, which in some of the designs of the frog are straight up and down. This guy, I gave it to him diagonally because I thought that would be more interesting. Oh, here it is. Okay. So the next thing that people usually ask me about are the fingers. You guys are going to be like, that's way too easy. What? So get ready for it. The fingers are totally easy. Also, this pattern, you could customize it too. So when you look at, I'll bring my little guy out here. When you look at these little guys, you can see from the pattern and from this particular doll right here, his arms are very short. And the point is, he should be able to touch the tops of his thighs with his little fingers. Okay. If you want him to have longer arms, just add some more of the plain stitches in the center of this particular piece. And you could give him longer arms. You can make his arms as long as you want. You could even elongate his legs. What I would say is, if you're new to amigurumi, what you should do is find the portions of the doll that are plain stitches. So if you have one that just says single crochet in the round, add a couple rows. And it will just elongate this shape here, or this shape down here, or this shape here. Okay? So, fingers. Here's my big boy. Okay. For the fingers, what you're going to want to do is find your top ridge here. And I mean, usually I'm not super crazy about how I put these on because I usually just like make them flat or whatever. You could go into any one of these stitches up here inside your amigurumi if you use the circle, if you use a smaller crochet hook. Obviously using this big old crochet hook, this, what was I using, an eye, is not going to get into these tiny tight stitches that are in this round. If I wanted to be like super duper crazy, what I would do, actually, let's do it. Let's be crazy. All right. I need a smaller hook. I'm going to crochet into the amigurumi ring. In general, there's a couple different ways to do this. So if you see this guy here, you can see that I have a ridge on this particular arm on the top of this arm. The way I folded it down, the amigurumi ring is on the palm. I didn't do that with this arm. Oh no, what should I do? Make it up. It's cool. Okay, so in general, I would normally go into this ridge to make the fingers, which I'll show you in just a second. But for this one, let's go into the amigurumi ring. So I'm gonna grab my, which one is this? This is my F hook. And I'm gonna pop through here. Now, the pattern when you're making the fingers, arms. Add fingers to the end of each arm by attaching light green yarn to the front loop of a stitch near the end of the arm and chaining 2. We're not going to use the loops. We're going to go right, this is my phone, right into the loops on this. It's the phone that I don't even know the phone number for, so that's fun. So I'm going to pull up a loop using my F hook like this. This is a good way to get into tight spaces. If you have found that your crocheting is way too tight, let's say you were totally stressed out and you were watching the news, right? Use a smaller hook, get in there, pull up a loop, and then put your regular crochet hook on. Okay, so I'm gonna leave a tail. I'm gonna do 1 and 2, and I'm doing them kind of tight, so we'll see how that goes. All right, and then in the next front loop, we're gonna do 2 half double crochets. This should be interesting. So I'm gonna try to see if I can get in there. And the thing is, if you can't, you know, whatever, it's fine. You'll figure it out. Maybe I won't get in there. It's real tight. I'm the queen of like stress crochet, guys, just so you know. Put a needle in there, wiggle it up. See if you can slide your hook through. I don't think it's still too big. Feels a little like surgery. Okay, so then I'm just gonna pull up. Oh no, I don't want to do it that way. I'm just gonna do it on this hook. Let's be crazy. All right. Half double. Wrap your yarn around your hook, put it through these stitches, pull up a loop. Then what you're going to do is yarn over, go through all 3. If you were doing double crochet, you would go yarn over, go through 2 loops, yarn over, go through 2 loops. For half double, you're going to just yarn over, go through all 3. So we're going to yarn over and we're going to go through that same stitch. Oh, I'm stretching it to within an inch of its life. Yarn over, pull through 3. Like this. So there we go. So there's fingers. And then single crochet in the next stitch. I'll just grab this guy right here. Why not? Did I go through 2 yarns? Probably not. Do I care? Not really. Nobody's gonna come and say that they're the police of my yarn. So there's that. Now, what I can do now is I can sit back and I can take a look and be like, is this gonna be good enough for me? And I think it is. So we did that single crochet. Let's cut this off. I'll pull this through. And then when I weave it in, I could weave it in that way. And then he's got like little fingers. See? Little fingers. And yeah, they're kind of like, they're a little wonky on this one, but you know, whatever. It's fine. You could, I mean, if we wanted to be like super duper crazy about it and make it really symmetrical. If you're a symmetrical girly, like some of my people are, let's see if I can pop this out. Ooh, Stacy's taking a scissors to her stuff. What? I'm that crazy. I don't care. Okay, if we're gonna be this way. He's crying. He's like, why have you cut my fingers off? This is so rude. me show you a different way to do this. Oh, this one's stuck in here. You know what? Clip. You only live once. YOLO. Okay. Let me show you another way to do this for your symmetrical people out there. You could, I'm going to go through this one right here. I'm only going to go through one. Maybe that might be a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm going to pull up one, and then I'm going to chain one. This is me changing my pattern on the fly, guys. Hope you don't mind. Okay, yarn over, and we're going to half double crochet here. I'm also going to splay these out a little bit. Instead of doing the half double crochet in the same one, I'm going to move over a little bit. I need to get through the stitch. Get in there. There we go. Okay, we're going to half double in another stitch over. And then I'm going to come to this one. Let's go into this piece right here. And we will single crochet. And this should spread it out a little bit. In general, the fingers, especially in the smaller ones, are easy to do because you're only using one yarn. When you're using two yarns, it does get a little hairy at times. But now, see, here are my fingers. And they're probably going to be wider than the fingers on my other ones. Most kids that are pigeon-toed are very good athletically. What happened to me? Oh no. All right, so then once you have fastened this off, I'm gonna stick this in here. I'm gonna go through here. There's like a little hole right there. And I'm gonna hide the knot in the hole because that's what I try to do. And honestly, oh, it's Nebula. I'm just gonna go through one little strand there because why not? Now, one thing I'm gonna say about these, like, oh, look at me, I'm being so crazy about the fact that I'm making knots and hiding things, and in some cases I don't even make knots. I'll just weave in ends and I don't have a problem. With that being said, if I were making something for a child, number one, I would never make this for a child because I don't personally trust safety eyes, the children's safety eyes, which are these black plastic bits, right? With the little thingies on the back to keep them in the head. I don't trust that with children. So this is not a doll that I would make for a child unless I modded it somehow. And one of the ways you can mod it is don't put the safety eyes on. See, look at it. That knot went right inside. This side I'm not even going to make a knot on. You could embroider the eyes on. That would make it acceptable for a child. I would probably be a bit more meticulous in my finishing practices if it were for a child. There are other dolls where I get very meticulous about this. This particular one right here, I'm not super duper crazy about because these I'm making more of as a practice to see what kind of adjustments I can make to the pattern so I can change the pattern itself. Because there are things that I did the first time around that maybe I wouldn't do the second time around. I have more knowledge in how I should be making things and building things. Oh, felt eyes. That would be good too. Felt them on there. Stab them in the face. That's a little grim. Sorry. Okay. But yeah, there's a number of solutions for you if you decide that you want to give this to a child. If you do, I would say be more meticulous about the finishing. Make sure that you're stitching it up really good so the pieces don't come apart. In general, a lot of the dolls I make are purchased or done as commissions for adults, so they're not getting heavy use. Like, I wouldn't give this to my dogs. I wouldn't give it to a toddler, mostly because of the safety eyes. That's my big hang up on that. I like, who knows where these safety eyes are coming from and how sturdy they would be if a kid's got their mouth on it. So, okay. So here's the other side. For this particular one, because I have the ridges here, you're going to see this is going to be so easy. And what I'll do is I'll do it the same way I did the other side, where I spread out the 2 middle fingers, so that they are both the same. But I guess what the main rule of thumb is like, if you're going to change the pattern at all, make sure you're doing it for both legs, both arms, both hands. You know, like, that's the best course of action, because you do want him to look cohesive, and you don't want to get to a portion of the pattern and then be like, oh man, I forgot that I did his fingers this way on one hand and I did them differently on another hand, and it's going to bother me for the rest of my life. Yeah, don't do that. You'll be sad. Oh, okay. So I'm doing the half doubles in the center in 2 separate stitches instead of the same stitch. And, ooh, you're going to go in this one right here. There we go. There's his little fingers. And if you want to make his fingers longer, do double crochets, do triple crochets. It really is up to you to do what you like. So there's his other hand. See? Yeah, they're cute, like little flaps, right? And then once I have them in, it just becomes like this little arc on the bottom of his hand here. And honestly, for this guy, I probably should have put both of his arms the same way. Don't know what I was thinking there, but in general, I like to try to have that, like, it's almost like a little paw, if you think about it. So yeah, so he was my big experiment in how to do this with yarn doubled. So there he is. I'll go ahead and weave those in later. Another thing that might be difficult for some are the eyes, because the eyes are stitched not only to the face, like to the eye bumps on the top of his head, but they're also they have to meet here. So let's try to sew some eyes on. He might look really cute with some embroidered stuff on his belly. Just saying. If you do, you know embroidery? Embroider something on his belly. It would be super fun. Okay, so when I do the eyes, obviously you'll see they were both done in the same direction, right? This guy looks a little bit loosey-goosey, but nobody's gonna notice. So, except for me. I like to put where the last stitch is, I like to butt it up against this mound here on his face. I'll move that out of the way. And then I don't really have any stuffing in these. They're tiny. Like, you're only doing 12 stitches in the round, and then you're popping in one of these eyes. You don't have to worry about stuffing them. If you want to stuff them with something, take your tail and wrap it around this safety eye here, and that could be your stuffing, but it really doesn't need it. So there's one place where you save on polyfill. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll hold his eye directly up against his muzzle here, and I try to go as close in to where it's gonna be nearly, how do I want to say this? Nearly underneath it. So there's the first stitch. And then what I'll do is I'll just kind of push him back a little bit so I can see his muzzle here. And I'm gonna go in to the next stitch in the eye, and I'm gonna try to find a stitch here right where the